do you find yourself, if you're responding to somebody, whether verbally or written in text or message, you can't just say one sentence. You have to write a novel, an essay, because you're so panicked and worried of what the other person might think about you. It's like you're on eggshells. You're in this permanent vigilant state all of the time with lots of voices going on in your head about, I should do this, I should do that, but I can't do this. I'm tired, I'm this, I'm that. Oh, it's exhausting, isn't it? Do you find yourself over-explaining all of the time, having experienced narcissistic abuse, where sometimes no could just be a simple answer? If this sounds like you and you are an over-explainer with everything, you've got to listen to today's episode. Hi everybody, my name is Caroline Strawson. Massive welcome to Trauma and Narcissism Redefined. Little caveat here, I won't be saying that title of this podcast for much longer because we have now finalised changing the name. There's lots of branding going on behind the scenes, and if you want to heal and thrive after narcissistic abuse, you are going to love the new title. You're going to love the direction of where this podcast is going, because I have absolutely done this with you in mind to help and support you. So watch this space. I'm just collaborating with my podcast production agency, but keep watching because I'm really, really excited. And I know you're going to absolutely love it because I take really seriously what I do. So in today's episode, I'm going to be talking about over-explaining and narcissistic abuse. It's something that I used to massively do and I didn't even understand. Now, if you're new to this podcast, huge welcome. Go and binge listen to some of the others as well, where not only have I experienced narcissistic abuse from a covert narcissist in my previous marriage, I actually retrained from being a podiatrist to help people just like yourself, but not just from the talking therapy side of things. I do a lot of nervous system work, the somatic side of that. So you'll hear me talking a lot about the psychology of yourself and the narcissist, but a huge amount about the physiology, the biology, what happens inside our body. And of course, if you're a regular viewer, watcher, listener, because we're on YouTube as well now, then welcome back. Over-explaining. This was something I used to do. Now, I don't know whether you can relate to this. If someone asked me to go somewhere or asked me to do something, there was things that started to shoot through my mind. So some of it was like, oh my God, I don't have the energy. Don't know whether you can relate to that. There's a part of you that kind of thinks, yes, I would love to meet for a coffee, or yes, I'd love to see you, or yes, I would love to do that or have you round. So sometimes we have these really great intentions because we know we should be doing more and connecting with more people, because of course we end up isolating ourselves, don't we, in narcissistic relationships. But we're in a freeze response. Now, when we're in a freeze survival response, we don't have that mobilized energy to our limbs like we do in a fight, flight, survival response. When we're in freeze, we really just have everything about looking out for our major organs. That's why it feels like we don't want to get out of bed in the morning. Yes, you're not lazy, you're not weak, you're not stupid. This is a survival physiological response in the body actually trying to protect you. But so often, because we have this front part of the brain and we overthink, very often we start to think, what's wrong with me? Get out of bed. I used to be like that, thinking, Caroline, just get on with it. But I felt like every day was walking in treacle, and even putting a wash on for me, like putting the kids' stuff in the washing machine, felt like I was climbing Mount Everest. But I used to berate myself for that, not actually realizing it was a normal human physiological survival response in my body, which is exactly actually what over-explaining is too. It's a survival response. Because those of us who end up being in these narcissistic relationships, we're in them because we're perpetual people pleasers. At some point in our life, usually from our childhood, we have perceived other people's behaviours, events, and that could be parents, it could be caregivers, it could be teachers, it could be friends, it could be siblings. As children, we're always seeing the things that are going on around us as a reflection of ourselves. So if something bad happens, we think it's our fault. We think maybe it's because we're not worthy or good enough. And when we have those ruptures in these types of relationships, if there's no repair that follows, it kind of starts to create a core emotional wound about the beliefs we feel about ourselves. And I teach a lot of this around 4 key core emotional wounds. I'm not good enough, I'm worthless, I'm not important, and I'm unlovable. And there can be offshoots of those like I don't matter and things like this. but really they're the 4 core ones that we tend to have, and they can change over time as well. When you start to do your deep healing, this can change. Mine was initially I'm not enough, it shifted to I'm unlovable, and I'm still working on I'm not important, because healing isn't linear and a magical destination. It's always an ongoing journey. So over-explaining, and those of us who are people pleasers are very much driven by external approval and validation. We haven't learned that our worth isn't transactional. It isn't in doing something. What we've learned is our worth comes from how other people feel about us, perceive us, act around us. Which means then if someone asks us a simple question, hey, do you want to meet for coffee on Saturday morning? We don't just have a simple check diary. Oh, I can make it. Yes, that would be great. And no, I can't make it. Oh, no. That's not what goes on in our minds when we get that question. What goes on in our minds, oh, I really would like to go, but I'm really tired. I've got to do this. What do I say though? I don't want to offend them. What do I do? Oh, we have all of this parts of us going on inside our head, pulling us in all these directions. And actually, these are all protector parts of us, again, trying to keep us safe from feeling the potential of I'm not good enough, or I'm unlovable, or worthless, or not important. But we don't want to offend the other person. So rather than simply looking in the diary and thinking, actually, I'm taking the kids to football, or I'm doing this, or actually, I need to do this at home, or I've got some work to do, and just saying, oh, I'm really sorry, but I can't make it this time. Oh, no, we don't say that. Oh, no. We need to write a novel. We can't, our no's turn into a novel. So we have to say, that's so nice of you. Thank you so much for asking. But I really can't make it because I have to do this, because of that, because of this, because of that. And it's such a lovely offer. Maybe we can do it another time. Could you do it this time? We end up writing an essay. What could be said in one sentence becomes a 5,000 word essay, like we're doing a dissertation or something like that. And I mean, let me know if you can relate to this. Do you find yourself, if you're responding to somebody, whether verbally or written in text or message, you can't just say one sentence. You have to write a novel, an essay, because you're so panicked and worried of what the other person might think about you. It's like you're on eggshells. You're in this permanent vigilant state all of the time, with lots of voices going on in your head about, I should do this, I should do that, but I can't do this. I'm tired, I'm this, I'm that. Oh, it's exhausting, isn't it? And actually, all of this is actually there to try and protect you. I know it doesn't feel like it, because it feels like so overwhelming. But actually, this over-explaining part of you, because it is a protector part, is trying to make sure that that other person doesn't act or doesn't say anything in a certain way that triggers those core emotional wounds. Now, I don't know about you, but the childhood I had was very much, my dad, you've probably heard me talk about it. My father was really unemotional. And my perception of that was, it was because of me. He wasn't showing me praise or acting in a certain way because I wasn't a certain way. I wasn't good enough. And that was my perception. Now, of course, as an adult, I could look back and think, hey, that's just because he was incapable. But once it's wired into that nervous system, the belief gets formed, and everything then is driven for survival of not feeling that core emotional wound. So like I said, my initial core emotional wound was I'm not good enough, because my perception of my father was, hey, I'm doing all this great stuff at school. It became very transactional about academics, doing all of this great stuff, but I'm not getting any praise. That must mean I'm not good enough. Now, of course, as an adult, I knew I was, but it had already been wired in, and that I'm not good enough core emotional wound actually made me a magnet to a narcissist, because I became so driven to prove myself, because I'd learned that my worth was transactional. It wasn't simply for breathing and being Caroline, simply who I was. That meant I was a magnet to someone like a narcissist, meaning I was also driven by how other people felt about me, that my worth was very much driven like this. Now, the plus side in all of that, it's made me really good in the work that I do in working with clients and in communities, because I'm very astute to subtle body language movements. So a slight raising of an eyebrow, the slight turning of a lip, the looking down maybe when I'm in a session with a client, I notice this, 7% of what I'm noticing in a session isn't just verbal. The rest of it is really, vocal tone. It's really body language and those subtle cues of me recognizing in the body what nervous system state the person is in, because that person could be saying all of the right things, but really as I look at their body and their body language, that is telling me a different story. So actually that side of it means I became very astute to recognizing these subtle changes in body language that didn't sometimes marry up with the words. So that's why when someone might reply to me and if I was in person say, yeah, that's okay. If they had a slight raising of the eyebrow, a slight raising of their voice in that, I would notice it and I would start to then have a survival response in my body because I'd start to think that they would think badly of me. So I would need to please even more, over-explain even more to try and get them to understand so they could down-regulate, they could go back to being, yeah, that's fine, but in a really nice way. Because at all times I was interpreting things as dangerous if they were being said because I was seeing their unhappiness, their way of feeling about me as a reflection of myself, which of course it isn't. But because of my experiences, the trauma, all of that wired in stuff into my nervous system, that was my perception. So this over-explaining part became very much an everyday protector part, a manager part for me in my system. And just take a moment to reflect on this. Is over-explaining one of your protector parts? Do you find yourself literally, what you could say in one sentence, having to say so much more for fear of how that other person will think about you? I'd love you next time someone maybe asks you to do something or asks you a question, just pause, just reflect for a moment. Maybe give yourself some space of things like, I just need to check my diary. Oh, I'm not sure about that one. Let me get back to you. Give yourself initially some time and space to reflect, to review, to ground. It is not your responsibility to make other people feel a certain way. If you are honoring who you are as your true self, that self-energy and leadership, how other people then feel, you have no control over. Yes, you may say you can't make it and they may not be happy, but you know what? You've still been true to yourself, because every single time you try and over-explain or end up doing stuff that really you don't want to do, you're abandoning yourself. You will feel even more exhausted. And then you wonder why you start to suffer with things like chronic illnesses, because everything is driven by you being in that survival mode, trying to make others feel and think and act a certain way around you. You've got no control over that. The only control you have is of yourself. That doesn't mean you've got to be rude either. It's not an either or. You can still express and communicate yourself coming from a place of clarity and compassion and confidence without fear of then how the other person will react. And if they do react in a certain way, you can either ignore their reaction because it's not really a question, or just simply say, I'm really sorry you feel like that. Done. End of. That's it. We don't need to over-explain again or go back and get them to feel a certain way. That's on them. They might just be annoyed because they would have liked to see you. They might be annoyed because they're seeing you not seeing them as them not being good enough. We're all carrying our own wounds. So I really wanted to do an episode on this because I've had a few people come to me recently saying that they are massive over-explainers, and it actually ends up getting them into trouble because as they're trying to over-explain, sometimes it makes the situation even worse. It inflames it even more. So let's try and stop. Let me know if wherever you're listening to this from, make sure you subscribe. Let me know. Come and make sure you follow me on Instagram. Send me a message on Instagram. Make sure you actually come and join my Instagram channel. I've started a new channel over on Instagram. It's free to join. All you need to do, I'll put the link in the show notes for you. And it just means you come into a little channel that I have where I'll share when my podcasts come out, any musings that I have, any help, any healings. It's free to be in there, and it's like you have an extra direct message in your DMs on Instagram where I will share these things with you. And I'd love you to come and join just so that I can help and support you. So I hope that's made sense to you. Let me know. Do you have an over-explaining part of yourself? I get it. Something I've had to work really hard on, and still now and again I have to work hard on it too. It's a real part, and it's a part that many people who experience narcissistic abuse have. It's a very common part, and it's there to look out for you. It's there to try and keep you safe, but it actually can get you into trouble, and it often means you end up abandoning yourself. So I hope this has been really, really helpful and educational. Make sure you like and subscribe on all the channels that we have our podcast, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.